Welcome back to another episode of The Quarantine Files, brought to you by the Good Brothers here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado, with the one, the only, the good brother himself, Alex Mercado.
The Bears.
Good brother, like a great Saturday night's live skit, we're going into the real heart of Americans. We are going to talk about the one, the only, the National Football League, or I should say, movies based off of our favorite sport, the National Football League, college football. Good brother, what are we doing today?
We are going to go over our top 5 favorite football films. To me, this was one of the harder lists I've done. Not in order. The order was pretty easy, but when I got to that last spot, it was so hard to find that number 5 spot. And with all the honorable mentions we're going to mention, it was a tough list, but I'm very proud of this list. And I love these films. I think, is this your favorite sports genre as football movies?
I think so. And I was kind of sitting there wondering, what is it about football that makes me enjoy it? And it's two things. It's the story behind the game, obviously, just like boxing, but it's also when shot well, a football scene, an action scene, there's a lot that you could process in it, because there's a lot of different battles on the field, not just metaphorically, but you have the trenches with the offensive and defensive linemen. You have the quarterback who's making the decisions and reading the field, the running back who's making the cuts. You see the wide receiver who's going down the field. Like, there's a lot of things to shoot. And if properly edited and properly shot with the cinematography, it's just such a grand thing. So to me, I love how football movies look. And there's also, just like in boxing, which we did the Creed and Rocky films recently, there's the underdogness that's much more palpable than, like, let's say baseball. You and I have done baseball lists where it's not as physical of a sport.
No.
So there's something more about being able to rise to the occasion physically to overcome it. What do you think about the football films, and like, where do they rank when it comes to sports
For
movies?
me, they're my favorite next to basketball. I think it's because I played football, and that football was the first sport that taught me, because I have terrible hand-eye coordination, for anyone wondering. I know physically I've always been very strong and very fast, and, you know, I do work out, but football was the first sport to teach me, okay, you don't have to be good with a ball necessarily. Like, there's positions in sports that you can do and be good at. So, like, I loved being a lineman. Like, I built my entire high school career out being like, I don't want to touch the ball. I don't want to do anything besides push this guy, tackle this guy. And that got me into wrestling. I mean, track. It got me into sports where I could shine and thrive. And even cheerleading, where I don't have to deal with a small ball or hitting an object or shooting something. I can deal with my athleticism and turn it into something else. So football started that for me. I wouldn't be an athlete or into lifting as much as I am now without football. So it really stuck with me over my whole life.
It's funny, you know, you and I are kind of similar in body types. You're definitely in better shape, and you're actually really a lot stronger than me. But what's funny is I was the total opposite. I played defensive end and tight end because I had good hand-eye coordination.
I don't want to be thrown.
Really
don't throw me the ball.
I used to get the ball, and I used to love doing that part of the game. So while we were both in the trenches, you and I had different philosophies on how we like playing.
Tackle.
Yeah, it's like you like being physical.
I like being a guard.
And I loved playing, you know, defensive end and, you know, tight end. So that's really funny that football really impacted us when it came to sports. And like you said, it was an introduction to us to what would be an Elk Grove Grenadier for the next 4 years each. And you having so much success when it comes to state championships and making runs at conferences. But good brother, let's go ahead and get into this list. I will start off with my number 5 movie, and that is Any Given Sunday, from Jamie Foxx, Cameron Diaz, Al Pacino, Lawrence Taylor. It is one of my favorites. To me, it is a version of the eccentricness that is football. It's what WWE was to wrestling in the 1980s, just moved up all the way to the max. What do you think about Any Given Sunday? Where is it on your list?
It's a little higher on my list. I do love the movie. I'll save my higher points for when it comes up on the list. I agree with you of the way it looks. It reminds me of that game NFL Blitz, where it's football, but like you said, turned up with body slams and broken knees. And I also do like how real parts are about like contracts and, you know, bonuses and, you know, worth it to get a concussion for an extra yard or two to get that extra $100,000.
Yeah, and which we'll talk when it's a little bit higher in list, so we'll gush a little bit more about it, because I definitely could have this a little bit higher depending on my mood. An Oliver Stone flick, so just a fun movie, a gritty movie, like you said. There's little nuances to it, you know, from Jamie Foxx throwing up to like him emerging, and then you just see how Al Pacino is being driven out of the league, which is funny because they consider him an old man's coach. But when you actually look in today's sports, people are coaching and playing it to really late into life. So I really love how it actually almost has aged even better over time, even
Dennis
though
Quaid coming as the old experienced
Love
guy
it.
compared to the young, unorthodox, quote unquote, quarterback. That analysts have that conversation. To this day, we have Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and we're still having that conversation of the young, fast black quarterback and the old white, technically better quarterback. And this was one of the first films to really show that. And it's funny that we're still having that conversation, even though it's a dumb conversation.
And of course, you have the moment with Aaron Eckhart, Two-Face himself, who's the up and coming coach, and they're trying to make him the center
They're
point.
morphing him into the next guy.
And you and I as sports fans know how much that's just so part of everyday life.
Yeah.
So we'll gush about it a little bit more when it's on your list. But what do you have at number 5?
So this one was tough because it was hard to fill this spot because I had to find out. I'll be honest, Varsity Blues almost made it, but I have a film similar to it higher on my list, so I took it out. For me, I put Draft Day at my number 5. The reason I put it there is because it's a side of football we don't see a lot. I mean, we literally had a 20-minute fantasy football conversation. There's something so fun about not only playing football, but on the back end of it, talking to coaches and lifting coaches and, the how you draft a team. And I like the behind-the-scenes look we get of, the Cleveland Browns of, he wants to make a pick and, it's not the right pick and he's arguing with his head coach and, how many people he has to answer to and he doesn't have to answer to. So that movie's very fun and it's very intense. I like being able to live it out in one day. I like movies that can do that give you the entire movie and it takes place in one afternoon. So I really enjoy Draft Day. R.I.P. Chadwick Boseman, who also shows up in the film.
Forever.
He ends up being the number 1 pick as a linebacker from The Ohio State University, my favorite college
go Blue.
team. Yeah, how's that been working out the last few years?
We're both from Chicago, Illinois, too, by the way. So
yeah, well, we root for Northwestern.
You step your game up, Northwestern, and Illinois.
But yeah, so that's why Draft Day for me, it's the only film that takes that look at it from a manager, coaching, not on the field necessarily, but what goes into it before you get the field.
I have a movie that I like. Draft Day. It's a very cute movie. It's also a very entertaining movie for sports fans. I have a movie at number 4 that I think does all of that better, and it's much more classic. That is Jerry Maguire. I think Jerry Maguire is...
Again, we've had this conversation on every list. I consider that a better film than a football movie, but it is a football movie. But I wouldn't put it on my favorite. I put it on my favorite sports films.
So, okay, let me tell you why I love it, right? First of all, you talk about behind the scenes. Not just from a player's perspective, which we see a lot, we'll get to that in a second, but we see the business side of it, how agents deal with it, how franchise deal with it. But then we see what Cuba Gooding Jr. did and the player's reaction, how important it is every single snap, every single play that's drawn, every single moment you're on the field. We see a really nasty collision that is a real thing in sports where at any given moment, your career can be ended. And it's not just the livelihood of yourself, but it's your family and the dependency of your other family members. We also do see what it is when you have family members that are only depending on you for money, like the brother or like the cousins or when we find out the original agent. And obviously, it's the time when we saw Renee Zellweger and Tom Cruise really just have this great connection. Obviously, the cute kid who grew up to be a guy, but it's really, to me, it's a movie that shows all aspects of it. The action scenes are really fun of actual football, and the film itself is really, really entertaining. I have Jerry Maguire at number 4.
It's a great movie. I think it's a better film than football movie, and that little big-headed kid is very cute. But again, I wouldn't put it on my football list. I would put it on my film list. But I understand why it's on your list.
What do you have at number 4?
I have my comedy football movie, and it's The Replacements. I love this movie. I watch it every time it's on. There's everyone and their mamas in it. It's inspirational. It's fun. It's Keanu at his best. It's fun. It's a fun, joyful movie. And I like the aspect of you can be living your normal day life and out of nowhere the NFL closing. They're like, hey, you're an athletic guy. Why don't you come play football? That's my dream.
How cool is it that we have a personal connection to The Replacements?
We do.
Because the one and only Orlando Jones has been on the show, who I got to interview with a few years back before American Gods came out. A sweet, sweet, sweet man. Gave a shout out to our father, who's a super fan of Biker Boys. Of all
I am also a super fan of Biker Boys. Top biker movie out there.
Don't get me started with that movie. So I love The Replacements. Obviously, Gene Hackman.
Yep.
Top tier.
Reeves,
Keanu.
Mr. Mandalorian himself.
John Favreau is in it. John Favreau. So
as
like,
a crazy linebacker.
It just, the list goes on and on about how great this movie is. To me, the reason why I think we love it is because TBS must have owned the rights to it or something. And they always had it on. So it just became part of our zeitgeist.
It's funny.
Yes.
The football is entertaining. They win by just the right amount. They don't have it together. It's just, there are certain parts of that film that to this day I'm like, man, that's so entertaining.
Pat Summerall and
dance,
John Madden are funny
I will
in it.
survive.
Yeah.
Like,
great music.
all of it is just so much fun. Them bonding as a team. It's everything you want in a comedy sports film.
Absolutely. Good brother. At number 3 in my list of top football movies, I have Varsity Blues.
That almost made my list.
This isn't the only one that deals with Friday Night Lights, good brother, if you catch my drift. But this one to me is probably the simplest form of it. This is the most innocent form of it, even though there's mature
Very Texas.
There's a lot of Texas, but I still think there's a movie that does Texas a little bit better than it. And I think Varsity Blues, more than anything, the reason why I get so much respect on my list, it introduced a lot of people to what is the high school football culture in small towns. Not just in Texas, but in small towns in all areas where people love the sport. And it also deals with the real issues of playing for a program that you're not getting paid for. You're doing it essentially for pride and for lineage, but you are sacrificing your body. You are sacrificing your health. You are sacrificing friendships and other activities that you've made plans for. And of course, you have James Van Der Beek, who's in that movie, but you also have the one and only Paul Walker, who who's amazing.
Billy Bob.
Yeah, so it's a great movie. John Voight as the head coach in that movie.
Great evil head coach.
I love that movie.
Yeah,
like it's just a great movie.
It's great. I only put one high school football movie on this, and it's the top one. So I
agree.
understand. That's why I didn't make my list. If I had separated differently, it easily would have made it. It's one of my favorite. Me and my high school friends watched this film a ton because of how just how much more fun it was than the other one we're going to talk about.
Well, it's interesting. I actually just have to correct myself. I think there's 2 movies that did high school football.
But that's not the center of it.
Yes,
though. But you're right,
okay,
technically.
yeah,
you are correct, because I also have we have the same 1 and 2, it seems.
What's your number 3?
It's Any Given Sunday. And for me, it gets so high personally because the speech Al Pacino gives is, when a little inside curtain, at Navarro, the speech that we listen to before we do anything, before Monica gives her speech, is the Any Given Sunday. So it's almost a rite of passage that... And for me, it was funny when I'm sitting there as a rookie about to compete. I was like, I know this movie. I'm like, I like this movie. And so that speech took on a whole new meaning. And as a coach, I use it for my athletes also. And I like the lesson in that speech alone, which kind of gets the whole movie is, you're at the prime of your life. You're on top. But, you get in your own way. You throw everything away. But you're still here. There's still hope. You can still turn it around. Kind of warning. And I think as a coach, I try to do that to a less extreme than Al Pacino in that movie, obviously, of, I made some mistakes at your age. Like, don't make those. Like, learn from me. I didn't have a me when I was your age. You have someone that can tell you, I've been down there. Don't do this. Try this. Do this. Don't worry about this. So for me, it's one of my bigger coaching inspirations of teaching the new generation from your past mistakes. You can be a champion. You can have great memories. You can have a great life. But you still could want better for the next generation. No matter how good you are, you want them slightly better and then slightly better. And that's how sports evolves over the ages.
Yeah, and I think Any Given Sunday, while it tries to do that, also shows the realness of Doggy Dog trying to while you're trying to help bring along the next generation, you also want to keep your spot as long as you can. So I think there's a realness to that. So, yeah, I could gush over it anyway.
It's the most real movie of them all, I think, to me.
Now, I would say the movie that felt the most real in game, as well as the emotion you see when it's the only thing you have in life. My number 2 football movie of all time, Friday Night Lights.
Same.
To me, from beginning to end, this is a movie directed by Peter Berg. You're dealing with high school football in the state of Texas, in the sections of Texas where they are filling 40, 50,000 seat stadiums.
I've driven by that stadium, actually, in real life.
And, Odette.
It's obnoxious.
Yeah, and over in Odessa, Texas, where they're winning a bunch of championships, where parents went to that same high school and won a bunch of championships.
Colleges play in these stadiums. That's how big these high school stadiums are down south, that the local colleges have to play in those stadiums.
The emotional scene of Boobie Miles sitting there with his uncle when he
What am I gonna do again for football?
and knowing that was his only way
That's
out.
way out. And his uncle.
And, the moments of
Going to
father
two
and
doctors.
father and son.
Tim McGraw.
Yeah, with Tim McGraw. It's just such a strong movie. Billy Bob Thornton, to me, one of his most likable roles.
Yeah.
And which is really hard because Billy Bob Thornton plays a bad guy or like a dislikable person very easily.
It's his face.
But like he comes off very likable in this movie, very understandable in this movie.
There's a realness to it because he's not a good guy necessarily. He is. I wouldn't call him a bad guy, but he's not a good guy. Like, there's a lot of decisions he makes that he has to make. But that's what's nice about it is, like, he's not trying to be fake. He's not trying to be too good or too bad. It is what it is sometimes.
And to me, just like the Rocky movies, the ending to this movie, which was spoiled to me.
Oh, my God. Great story here, people. So when I saw it, my mom rented it because we had a Blockbuster.
Spoiler alert to Friday Night Lights.
I mean, at this point, it's all.
Yes.
But at the time, it was new. It was brand new, and it was the hottest thing out there. Like, every high schooler was watching it. So we rented it as soon as it was there. Me and my mom watched it. And coming home was young Michael off of work, I believe, and thinking he had already seen it, even though it was a new movie, she spoiled the ending of them losing, which is every boy's good first cry, and which is why Mike is such a hateful person this day, is because one of the best movies of all time got ruined for him as he walked in the door after a hard day at work at Jewel Osco.
And it is a brilliant ending. It is an emotional, even when it's spoiled to you.
Here's the thing I always tell people. I show this to my cheer friends. So, Brittany and all her friends and the boys, they hate sports. They all do. Mm-hmm. And I show them this movie, tears at the end. And I get a tear still watching that movie, sobbing. They're like, that was so sad. And I'm like, I told you, like, this movie will break you at that ending. And the way they hug each other, him and his wife with the kiss, like, so simple. I love the ending. Every time when I walk into work and I greet my friends, we greet each other, State.
That's so funny.
Every time. So, like, it's stuck with me for so many years.
Now, another inside baseball, literally about baseball here on the Good Brothers. There's been one fundamental difference in my sports career to the Good Brothers, and that is championships.
Yes, I have never lost, and Mike has lost quite a bit. Second place.
I've won a lot of second places, and there's one legendary story in our household of my travel baseball team at 15 years old going against the Schaumburg traveling team that had a bunch of 17-year-olds while we were 15, losing the championship game, and it just having that emotional feeling, like being connected to these. I don't talk to a lot of these guys, but I can name every single one of those dudes off the top of my head. We still talk to each other on social media. There's a bondship of winning is great. Winning, I've never won a championship, so I don't know the bondship, but I could tell you losing in the title game and being that close to it, not it being a blowout, losing by that much, you gain this like bondship with each other. Nobody else on the planet felt that pain that we did on that field that August, Saturday night. Like no other humans other than those 14, 15-year-old boys felt that pain of watching the high schoolers that were going to graduate the next summer celebrating with what we thought was our first place trophy. And I think Friday Night Lights, more than any other movie, makes it okay. Just like Rocky, where they lost, but damn it, those boys won. They earned everything. Like, they're going to be okay in their souls, I think. I think that movie gave any other generation of those Panthers would have killed their souls, not those boys.
And it's funny, I like the way the movie ends. The next year they go undefeated and win the whole thing.
Of course.
Which is normal for high school. Like, sometimes you do get second. But my coach would always say this he would always tell us before we got there, he's like, win or lose, the sun is going to rise tomorrow. You're going to be alive. Your day is going to go on. And that always stuck with me. And like in this film, it's like, yeah, like you did lose the championship. And it does suck. And it can suck for a while. But tomorrow you're going to wake up and the day is going to keep going. And there's something poetic about that. It's so charming about that of like, yeah, like it does suck and you can feel bad, but life's going to keep going.
And one last thing that Friday Night Lights does great, that every athlete from high school to college has ever felt? You always have that 1 or 2 games in your life where you felt like the guys who walked in or the girls who walked in were so much bigger than you. They were just 2 times bigger than you, 4 times. Like, it just rolls. And that's how it felt in a championship game for them. You're like,
I
oh
love
my God.
how we play different ends of this, where you're the Panthers. Like, I always talk about sports movies, and I joke with our friend Cisco that I was like, I've always been on the other team. Like, I've never been the Mighty Ducks. We were the team that won before the Ducks. Like, I was Russia. I was the red team that went against Permian. Like, I've never had to deal with it. I'm very blessed. I went for 5. I got 5. Like, I appreciate yours part of that. Like, I've never been able to look at it from that side of it.
It's fun, but I think the one thing we all agree with is what our number 1 football movie of all time is. But before we get to that, good brother, I want to give some honorable mentions. See what you think about what I had on this. So many, but
Little Giants.
Little Giants was on the list. Brian's Song.
Brian's Song, beautiful. Another crying one.
And over here in the city of Chicago. And one that people are going to laugh that I put on, The Waterboy.
Well, I was just going to, that's my list, The Waterboy.
The Waterboy is so good.
It's a really good football movie.
It's a good movie, and it's a good football movie.
It really is. It's very fun. It tackles college football, which we don't get a ton of.
But we should have known better, because now with the hindsight of history, Adam Sandler being such a sports fan, of course he would have actually a pretty good comedy football movie. Like, that makes sense.
Now, I'll say, I'm going to ask you this, and I was going to save it because we're probably going to do another list. What is your favorite football documentary? Because there's a lot of good ones there. Personally, for me, it is between 2. It's the 30 for 30 they did on Miami.
Yes.
And the 30, but my personal favorite is the one they did on SMU.
So
when that's about the whole conference
Yes.
and how it went, that would be my favorite football. doc.
So SMU getting the death penalty in college football for the scandal is a great one.
That's my
The
favorite.
U is arguably the best.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Next to probably the Michael Jordan documentary.
Yeah.
The U for the longest time.
OJ in America is a really good
yeah.
look at the football part of it.
But I think, honestly, for all the kids listening right there, shout out to you guys for listening to these 2 old passages. I would say check out NFL Films on YouTube. The Ebersol family, the father and son, have done really great things like the autumn wins of the Oakland Raiders. The
football leaves itself open for some of the best docs. That's why I'm
Yeah.
like, we're not going to go into it too much because we might do a favorite 30 for 30 or a favorite doc.
That's a great
But I
list.
definitely I almost put the U one in here, but I'm like, no, let me save that and we'll talk about it separate. But I did want to get your opinion on what some of your favorites are, and we're pretty much on the top tier of the top tier.
So check it out.
And Last Chance U.
Yeah, anytime the NFL has any type of proper documentary from NFL Network or from NFL Films, highly suggest you check it out. But good brother, let's go to our number 1 football film. It is one that universally we all love. Every few years it gets a resurgence because we see a clip on the internet or we end up seeing something when it comes to social movement. I'm talking about Remember the Titans. Personally, this movie means so much to 2 Grenadiers. When you play football, you do the pads like they did, because this movie was kind of around that time that we were in high school. So it impacted literally the football teams that we were on, took inspiration from this football team. But what it means as a movie still resonates to this day. I think it's easily the number 1 football film.
I think it's one of the best sports movies of all time because not only is it a fantastic film, it's a fantastic football film. And not a lot of movies do both.
But to me, admittedly, it is cheese and corny because it is Disney.
Yep, it's Disney.
It's super Disney.
And it does it perfectly.
But to think that this was Denzel, too.
Yep.
Like, this is Denzel before Denzel. Like, obviously, with Glory, like, Denzel's always been a powerhouse. But what I'm saying, what we think of Denzel in 2020, that was not what people thought of Denzel in Remember the Titans. And when he gives that speech in Gettysburg, or when you hear strong side, left side, like, or when you see, can't you see we're brothers? Like, there's just so many moments in that movie.
So good.
It's the best.
For me, like, I think any good athlete or coach, you mimic a lot of what you do as an athlete or coach off of things you grew up with. So movies are your own memories. So as an athlete, I know me and my friends did the strong side, left side in cheer even, just because, me and my boys knew that. And as a coach, I use that one all the time. I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, green, blue. If you come here, this is what you're going to do. And I've used that one this year, especially with everything going on in the world. I go back to that movie a lot talking about, as a coach, this is more relevant than ever, this movie, about teaching people from different races and different cultures that regardless of how you feel, you're here as an athlete. So for the better or good, you will respect each other. You're gonna learn to play together, and maybe somewhere down the line you learn to love each other. And I love that message. And like you said, it's the cheesiest movie ever. But when you do something perfect like Cheese, there's a reason it's there. It's a reason it delivers. And Denzel is just, again, he's not a good guy. He's not necessarily the best guy. He's hard on these kids, and you don't like him at first, but you realize what he's doing. He's toughening them up. And I like the whole line of, you wouldn't go easy on these boys if they were white. Like, you're not doing them any favors going easier on them, because when they go out into the real world, they're going to have to deal with it. So you overcompensating isn't any better. And I'm like, that's a message no one really understands, and it's important to this day.
And it's not by accident that this movie is great, even with the cheese and corn. You're talking about Will Patton, about Denzel Washington. You're talking about Ryan Gosling is like a little part of this movie.
We get Opie out of this.
Yeah.
We get The Wire out of this.
Donald Faison is in it. Like, it is such a strong, sunshine. Like, there's so much in this movie that is just
Elastic.
Yeah.
Mr. Fitness himself nowadays.
It's not by accident. Because we could think about it like, why was it so successful? Because it was stacked.
They address just enough, not too much, but just enough. It's a movie that probably couldn't be done to this day, but it's a great look back that can make you feel happy and hopeful. And I think that those movies are very underrated and underappreciated, and just the last few years, like you said, have really come out and be like, no, those movies are important for that reason. Because sometimes you just need a good, joyful, nice story with a nice ending, and the good guys win, and everyone learns, and we bonded, and like, that's a fun message. Sometimes that is the best part.
Bro, Hayden Panettiere is in this movie.
Yeah, as a child, as a football-loving little girl.
It was super smart. Like, they write her
Yeah.
so funny in that
The
movie.
dialogue's second to none.
Yeah, so I adore that movie so freaking much. Like, you watch it every year in every generation you are in school. So whether you're in elementary, middle school, and then high school, you watch it throughout every stage. Every bro watches it. Every couple watches it. It's great for the entire family.
Again, it's a movie. You don't have to be a football fan to love this movie.
It's not about football. It just so happens to have great football in it.
It just has really good. Like the summer camp scenes, I'm like, ooh, bad memories.
A lot of bad memories for a lot of people when they see summer camp. Yeah.
Everyone misses football until camp, and then you're like, oh man, never mind. I just want to play.
So shout out to what is arguably one of the most important sports movies.
I believe so.
And then what would translate into films of all time.
It's like Major League, where you start taking these films, you're like, this is one of the best sports films of all time. And you start putting like, okay, it's almost gets taken to a separate category of champions of champions.
So, good brother, when this episode releases, we would have had our first week of the NFL season. So let's hope.
Man, I already went 1-0 in every division, and Mike's players got hurt. What?
Wow, obviously, now that you put this in the universe, it is going to end up very bad for you. It's so many different ways.
If we do the next episode and it's Mike by himself, he murdered me.
So make a guess now, before we run down our list, who is in the Super Bowl?
The Bears.
75.
And the Bears.
Negative.
Bears practice squad.
Bears
tie
Super
game.
Bowl.
Double overtime.
I'm eating Polish sausage right now, and my head is full of beer and sports. I'm going to go Bears 472, Kansas City 13.
I will go Cowboys and the Chiefs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who wins?
Cowboys.
Interesting. Cowboys Super Bowl.
The We Dumb Boys.
Oh,
I love the Cowboys.
Of course you
They're
do.
my second favorite football team after the Bears. Because if
you
you don't root for the hometown and you're from a hometown, you're kind of a dick.
I kind of
I don't care if the Bears suck. You still root for them. You don't be a Packers fan born in Chicago, guys. Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
I'll go Saints, Chiefs.
I like that.
Chiefs win their second straight
I like
Super
mine
Bowl.
better, though.
Interesting.
Good
brother. Let's run back this bad boy of our top 5 football movies. At number 5, I have Any Given Sunday. You have
Draft Day.
At number 4, I have Jerry Maguire. You have
The Replacements.
At number 3, I have Varsity Blues. The Good Brother has
Any Given Sunday.
Our number 2 top 5 football movie of all time is
Friday Night Lights, the movie. TV show, also very good.
very, very solid. And at number 1, to top off our top football movie list here on the Quarantine Files, brought to you by the Good Brothers on Mercado Airwaves, is
Remember the Titans.
That is correct, good brother.
Never forget.
And what a phenomenal list. I love when we get to that. We've done a really deep dive into the sports world as all the sports are getting ready for the playoff push. Yeah. As it seems like the NFL, by the time this recording comes out, has played week 1 of the NFL season. We've seen that it looks like the testing has been gone well. So if you're getting ready for football, this is the way to do it. Check out some of these movies. Obviously, if you're a football fan, you're listening to this specific episode, you've watched all of these. So pick your favorite one and time it before kickoff of your favorite team. Good, brother. That is it for our list of top football movies. What have you thought of what we did so far of the last few weeks in sports?
I like it. We're saving our heavy hitters. Well, 2 heavy hitters and maybe a more fun list because of the lack of knowledge I have on a certain topic coming up. But definitely be on the lookout for basketball, be on the lookout for our secret sports one. And then we're going to kind of see where the world is at that point to continue these lists.
Absolutely. And with that in mind, please take care of yourself, take care of each other. Make sure if you're listening to the last few episodes of the Quarantine Files brought to you by the Good Brothers that have to deal with sports movies, check us out at Sports from the Couch on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Guys, we do some really fun conversations with athletes and with experts. I am the host, and I try to bring you the what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and none of the BS that you hear on some of the other sports networks. So check me out on Sports from the Couch. But until then, the Good Brothers on Twitter at Mercado21Alex. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, and the show is on Twitter at Good Brothers Pod. Make sure you like, rate, review, and share us wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. Become a producer of the show and the network at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. We have swag, teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves.
We have the When in Doubt, Merc It Out t-shirt available.
And it will look good this fall season. That's teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. For the good brother himself, Alex Mercado.
Adios.
I'm the good brother, Mike Mercado. We'll see you in the next episode of the Quarantine Files, brought to you by the Good Brothers, here on the Mercado Airwaves
Network.